Hi, I'm Amanda Morgan, and this is Not Just Cute, the podcast, where we discuss all kinds of topics to help bridge the gap that exists between what we know and what we do in early childhood education. We're starting conversations with academics, authors, decision makers, educators, and parents so that together we can improve the quality of early childhood education, while at the same time protecting and respecting the childhood experience. Today, I'm joined by Heather Jackson, author of Actions of Play, Weaving Play Schemas into Inquiry-Based Learning and Project Work. She's here to help us see play with fresh eyes and discover how to use it as a powerful tool for inquiry. You can find this episode's show notes, which are always full of links, tidbits, and resources at notjustcute.com/podcast/episode 80. Before we jump in, a quick reminder that you can share the importance of play through the Why We Play parent letters. You can check them out and grab a free sample letter by going to notjustcute.com/whyweplay. As I've said over and over, people don't value what they don't understand. So let's do our best to help others understand and value play. The Why We Play letters were written to help you do just that. Grab your free sample letter today at notjustcute.com/whyweplay. If you want to understand fascinating play behaviors and turn them into deeper learning opportunities, this episode is for you. Let's jump in. Heather, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast. I'm so excited to talk with you about this new exciting book that you're putting out into the world.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, especially I've already had a great podcast experience a few years ago with you and talking about sort of the principles of my book. And now it's actually in print. It's amazing. Amazing.
I love that. I love seeing that full circle journey. So for those that maybe haven't listened to that episode yet, and I'll make sure to link it in the show notes so people can, but do you want to just catch us up a little bit? It takes us back to as the middle of COVID, right? And we sat down and talked about the concept of verbs as projects and themes rather than nouns, which is what we tend to do. So kind of meet us there and catch us up to where you are now.
Sure. So this concept happened for me years ago, like 2015, and I illustrated in the book too. One of the opening chapters talks about where I started thinking about this deeply, about our work, instead of using nouns such as the firefighter or I don't know, some off topic that I remember doing back in the 80s, the circus. And instead of using those nouns as your lead for project work or weekly themes or monthly themes, whatever you're doing, is to look at the verb. Why are children fascinated with firefighters, right? What is it about the firefighter that's fascinating, right? And lots of times it's the truck, it's the movement of that truck. So then could we not think about what is the verb? And so when I think about the verb, it's that movement, right? It's that movement. Children are fascinated by movement. Children are fascinated by balls rolling, cars. And it's not necessarily the car, but the car has wheels that moves. And that's what the children are fascinated with. And it's that play schema of trajectory that children are fascinated with. How does something move without me carrying it somewhere, right? And so I always look at when I'm talking with my educators, and we try to dig down deep to create that complex project. That's what you want. You don't want that simplistic, just surface level work. It's not fulfilling for yourself, and it really doesn't give the children what they're striving for and what they're trying to figure out in our world. Because ultimately, children are trying to make meaning of our world, and it's our job to help them. And so by trying to figure out the verb of the noun that we're looking at, I think that you can create richer projects. I'll just give you a little example of a ladybug. I think I talk about this in the first podcast, and I also talk about it in the my book. But the ladybug is crawling all over our playgrounds right now as spring is coming, right? And so children, especially little ones that are 2 and 3, they're running around after these ladybugs. They can actually catch some of these ladybugs. They're crawling on them. And is it really what we traditionally would have done would be like, oh, let's do a project on ladybugs. The children love the ladybugs. They're so interested in them. But is it really? If we step back for a second, instead of jumping into that traditional, is it really the ladybug? Or is it the movement of that little wee creature and what could actually happen with that ladybug? And Loris Malaguzzi, in one of his books, talks about a project that happened on the playground at one of their schools in Reggio. And he talked about the bugs crawling all over the playground. And one of the teachers, like they were just crazy all over the playground. And the children were watching them. And the teacher said, what are they doing? What are they trying to do? And one of the children said, I think they're lost. And
Mm.
that turned into mapping, because when you're lost, what do you need? You need a map. Today, kids talk about their GPS, mom's, car. You just ask, we want to go to McDonald's down the street. And so you get a map. But in those, years ago, it was maps that we were looking at. So on the playground, they built a city for the ladybug. They built maps. They drew maps for the ladybugs. They drew signs, stop signs and lights. And it all of a sudden became bigger than that ladybug that you would to paint on a paper plate and put glue black dots on. And that's simplistic, and children deserve to have something deeper and more meaningful to participate in. So that's where I go to in the verb. I'm always looking for that deeper meaning in our
Yeah.
project.
And it becomes more intentional and meaningful. It gets past just the cute, the
Yes,
Pinterest version, the universal,
yes,
everyone does ladybugs
yes,
this way versus what do you find interesting about that thing? So
yes,
going back to like firefighters, I'm curious, is it possible if I'm looking at children who are fascinated with the firefighters and I'm thinking, why is this fascinating to them? Rather than just jumping at level
yes,
1 firefighters, cool, let's find all the cute firefighter activities. If I look at why are they fascinated, you mentioned movement, which I think is a
yes,
common thing. Could it
yes.
also be for another group of children, could it be that they're fascinated with the concept of rescue?
Right, right. And
So it could
that,
be a different thing for different
yes.
children.
There is no right or wrong. There is no right or wrong, but it is looking at the deeper meaning, right? So yes, it could, and I give an example that, you do community helpers for the week,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what is at the base of that? What is the verb of the community helpers? And it is rescuing, it's caring, right? So
Mm-hmm.
now caring becomes a bigger project, because what are all the things in our life that are caring for us, even coming down to the garbage guy that picks up our garbage. He is taking our garbage away. He is part of that caring that we all need as humans to create our life together, right? So then what can we do as a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old to care for other things, right? And so then it becomes very creative, and like just the, simple thing as painting a picture and putting it up on the walk that you're going to, that it maybe makes somebody happy, that they see your beautiful sunshine or drawing of yourself, right? And that's caring, right? So then it doesn't become like a firefighter does this and, the cook does this, and it takes that away, and it all of a sudden becomes, I think, more rich for the
Mm-hmm.
educator and the children. And for the educator, you deserve to work on interesting projects, not, okay, last year we did 8 apples in, September. We got to bring out the apple stuff. That is so stereotypical. But there's so much more work in our world of early childhood that we can be doing. And I think the verb and the noun can give you that work piece.
Yeah, it's far more respectful of both partnerships to
Hmm.
to show that we're really listening in this conversation, not
Yes.
just assuming that we already know what they're interested in or what they're wondering
Right.
about. And I
Yes.
love that that shift, just another layer of question of where's the action word, right? And I think
Yes.
that also reminds us that this should be an active process, not a passive project process, but that
Yes.
the children have an active role in that, and it's an active conversation between the two of
Yes.
us. I should mention the book is called Actions of
Actually,
Play.
yes. And that's where it came to. It was like we had lots of discussions back and forth with my co-author, Lisa, and I, and with the publisher, and so many different titles came across. And then all of a sudden, Actions of Play. And it's like, yes, that's what we're looking for. That's what we as educators need to be, that detective and dig deep and say, what is the action in this play? Right.
Mhm.
And so
Rather
that's,
than a snapshot, right? Again, I keep going back to the Pinterest or the social media version, right?
yeah,
That's just a static snapshot. And we
yeah,
have to go past to see. I love the way you phrase that question. What are the actions of
yes,
play?
yes,
Not just what should this activity look like?
yeah,
What should the action, what will or what could
yeah,
the
yeah.
action of play be?
That's right. And I always come back to, it doesn't have to be a product. It can be an experience. You can, just, I think in our schools, in the sunflower schools, we're not always looking for that product. You don't always have to make a product. Whereas early childhood is very typical of, we got to make a product, right? So with the firefighter piece or even the ladybug, oh yeah, we got to make a ladybug and we got to cut out a fire and they can glue and stick on stuff on. But that's not learning. That's not doing. That is really superficial. And again, it comes back to that product. And just in the last few years, I've just been really mindful about how much value parents and educators put on this product that the child now has made. And so then the value for that child is that now I'm important because I made this picture. That I think we have to steer away from that. I think we have to get to a place where, yeah, it's good that. So we're in a seniors living building where we are in one of our schools, and going down to see the seniors and doing music together with the seniors. That's part of caring. That's part of, community helpers and all of that. We can be, as 2 and 3 year olds, have that power. And I always think, how can we give children that power? But I also, it's like, that's an experience. It's not a product that we've just made, right? So I think we have to stay away from that and not do the whole product thing so much.
Yeah, it's that experience that's most
Yes,
important. It's an
yes,
important distinction.
yeah,
So in the book, you talk about the difference where you compare interests versus intentions. And I think
yes.
it's kind of aligned with what you're saying here. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Interests versus
Sure.
intentions.
You hear it's a buzzword, like what are the children's interested in? What are they interested in, right? And when I really look at it and just my own personal physical work every day, it's not, interests are something that's passive, something that if you look in the dictionary, it defined as a passive, something that kind of fills your time. It's not, rich or really filled with potential. Whereas an intention is, there's books written, The Intentional Teacher, right? Intentional is an important, interesting word. And so why aren't the interests of the children intentional? Like they are trying to make meaning, like I always say, of their world. So they are intentionally doing this, and this, and they're playing this way because they're trying to figure out, how does that ball move fast and slow? How does the ramp affect how the ball moves, right? Even though they're not verbalizing that, that's going through their brain. And it's us as educators to be watching and recording those intentions about what they are trying to figure out in their world and the materials that we give them, right? All the loose parts and the really rich, interesting materials that we're giving them to play with in a different way than they do at home. Or, if they go to the library, like they have an opportunity to figure out things in a really interesting way with loose parts. But that's what I feel intentions are, is that really interesting work of young children.
And it sounds like that is kind of the layer that helps you get to the action word, the verb, right? That instead
Yes.
of just looking at here is the noun that they're interested in,
Yes.
what is the intention behind that so that I can support that active piece
Yes.
rather than just the passive noun? But
Yes.
what are the intentions? What is it
Yeah.
that they're doing, not just
Yeah.
passively watching, but what are they actually doing with
Right.
that thing?
Yes. And I always get that question. We do a lot of tours for other educators from around Ontario, just looking to see what we're doing. And they always ask, well, if one child is doing something, then how does it become a project? And I said, if it's interesting and important, and worthy work, as I always talk about, then other children, it's like contagious, right? If you're, and now you're offering different kind, I'm just talking about the ball movement, right? It's not the ball that children are interested in, it's the movement of that ball. So if a ball is big, if a ball is small, if a ball is medium size, how does it fit on the ramp? So then that's our job to get those big, small, medium balls so that we see this movement. Can a block move the way a ball does? And that, like, there's so many ways that you can throw in a curveball, for a little pun there, but a curveball in the project work by offering them different size ramps. Can we make our own ramps? How do you make a ramp, right? And then it becomes bigger than just the ball. The ball is the catalyst to that action piece. And then it's that interest. They all are like 2.5, 3 year olds. Like I know we have one little guy every day. He's got a little car in his pocket. Well, it's the movement of that car that he's fascinated with, right? He's going to start riding a two-wheeler with training wheels on it. His mom said for his birthday for spring. And that again is the same thing. It's that movement that he's
Mm-hmm.
interested in. How can I go fast? How can I go slow? And those are all the things that we need as educators to be recording in our journals, to be posting as project work. How can you move fast? I think that's a great way to start a project. How do you move fast? Ask a 3 year old, how do you move fast, right? So then it becomes big.
Yeah. Similar to that question that you mentioned your visitors ask, one thing I was wondering was what if you're looking at the intentions? You have children who are interested in the same thing, the
Yes,
object, but their intentions, the thing, the action that fascinates them is different. So, for example, back to the firefighters, if you can see
yes,
that some of them are fascinated by the movement of the truck,
yes.
and another child is fascinated by the care or the rescue.
Rescuing, yes,
Yeah. So what do you do with a group of children who are interested in the same noun, but the
right.
verbs that intrigue them are a little bit different from each other? So how do you approach that?
So, in our classrooms, you could have 2 and 3 projects happening at one time, right? And I think that would be a great comparative to have, and that you're setting up activities for the child who is interested in the movement of that truck and the tires and all those things, and how do big tires move and little tires and all of that. And then the other part would be the rescuing. So you're setting up play proposals, activities based on the rescuing and caring and the activities to do for that. So then you have a comparative, which is a great documentation piece, as to how you did that project with 2 interests and intentions from your children, right? So yeah, they both can go on at the same time. They have to. They absolutely have
Right.
to. Yeah, yeah,
And I love that that could be, I think, an easy first step for someone who's hearing this for the first time. They're really used to the noun theme, and this
yeah,
feels really uncomfortable. I think what you just described, if I'm coming from that point, that's an easier way for me to say, okay, I'm going to keep my firefighter week, but now
yes,
I'm going to look at my activities
yes,
as verbs. So I'm going to watch for those verbs that I can bring in. And so it kind of
yeah,
becomes a um, kind of a subheading that they
yes,
can take that
yes,
first step and say, okay, let's look at activities as activities that are active and
yes.
find the verbs.
Right. Yes. And that is a that is the function. So even if you did a theme, so you did ladybugs, like I know traditionally, like 25, 30 years ago, everything in our classroom would be about ladybugs, right? Well,
Right.
who said that all the children are interested in those ladybugs, right? And the way that you're presenting it, especially. And so this way, Now yes, you could have two and three, four things going on at one time that were important, not simplistic things, but really important work, and that you've been able to discover the verb in the noun. And so there is space. We can hold space for everything that's happening around that one thing. And in our one school, we are attached to a seniors living. And so unfortunately, they have fire trucks and ambulances come there a lot. And so
Mhm.
our kids on our playground see those fire trucks and ambulances all the time. And they love when they see, and the fire guys, they stop and they, show them the trucks, and it's always beautiful. But, and then that interest is fleeting and it's gone. Like nobody's ever done anything on fire trucks or fire, because it's just a moment and then it's gone,
Mhm.
right? So I think you have to be flexible. You have to be open. You have to be watching. You don't just jump forward. One of the things that we've been working on this year is a slow pedagogy. So just slow down, step back.
Mhm.
Nobody's asking you to do this tomorrow, right? Yes, your children were excited about the fire truck that drove by, right? So then we slow down, we stop and say, okay, what is it that's interesting them? And nobody's asking you to, and that's how projects last for a long time, is because we're slowing down so that the children can slow down, and really investigate what it is that that the intentions of their play comes from. Where does it come from, right? So it's our job to slow down. Yeah.
That's such an important reminder, such an important reminder. So your background is Reggio, and I think we kind of have mentioned that before, that this is still something that applies to whatever philosophy that you're working from. There are places where they all meet together in that patchwork philosophy. So, but can you connect some of those dots for us from your background? So you talk about play schemas, and that's something that is particularly focused on in Reggio, but it's something that I think other
Yes.
play-based educators will see in their own work, even if they're not familiar with the term. So can you help us understand
Right.
what play schemas are and how we use them in supporting play?
Right. So I'll just tell you, in our book, we also do, we've connected all the play schemas, all the verbs as nouns to different curriculums, to the Montessori, to the frog curriculum. We've connected and emergent curriculum. So that's very big right now, is that emergent. And so the verb and the noun very easily fits into that emergent curriculum. So with play schemas, children, it's really interesting, that work, and we see it every single day, but until we've labeled it, you don't understand what it actually is. So play schemas are natural urges that children have, that they want to do things over and over and over again. And so it's that child that, again, wants to see the movement of the balls, movement of the cars, is fascinated when a car goes by, or we have a big garbage truck that comes down the road, and our toddlers, they scream to the fence and are just so amazed at how big those tires are, right? And how noisy it is, the big truck coming down. So that's called a trajectory play schema. So those are children that are very fascinated with the whole wheels and movement and how things go. Even flying, how things flying even fits into that whole play schema. So there's about 8 or 9 play schemas, but definitely 8 that really show themselves every single day in our children's play. Another one is enclosing, how, and it starts right up from infants and babies when they start to doing peekaboo, that they like something on their head or something on your head, and you do peekaboo. So that's the enclosing play schema. And that one is very fascinating, even up until 18 months. 2-year-olds love the whole peekaboo concept, but then it's then building forts. And I remember as a child building forts, right? I was probably 10, 11, building forts in our backyard. I loved building forts.
I did too.
Yeah. And my brother and I, we, from the couch cushions to the big sheets that or tablecloths my mom would give us. We would build forts. And so today I love camping. And so that's part of enclosing. So I'm still working on my enclosing play schema. And, there's certain things that you can't help but keep doing. There's also the transporting, whereas you have children just moving materials all over the playground or all over your classroom. And so so there's about 8 of them, and they're all very relevant. Once you start reading about them, you see, oh my gosh, our children are doing that. Even the dumping of the toys is about trajectory. They are trying to figure out how these toys move. And so it's our job to flip it and create positive play experiences, not be upset that, oh my gosh, that child just dumped all those 1,000 Lego on the floor, right? That child's trying to figure out, all educators have that sound in their brain of all the Lego falling out onto the floor. And so it's our job to flip it and figure out how can we turn that into a positive. And years ago, we had an educator, she attached a big plumbing tube, pipe she had, and it had a little bit of an elbow in it to the bottom of a play shelf. A toy shelf. And so she would put a basket underneath. And so this one little guy would dump it down the tube and it would go right into the basket. The noise satisfied his sense of, movement, the movement in the tube. It just was, everything went down into the tube. And so now we're giving him a positive way to dump the toys. And then balls were just so fascinating. When the educator brought out balls, it was just like, he thought it was like amazing that he'd figured all that out. So there's lots of ways to flip it. And we give you lots of examples in the books on how to help children because you can't stop them. They're going to keep doing it. I don't know how many times I've tried to stop somebody from dumping toys until this a method came out, or dumping into a big box, even if you can't get a hold of a plumbing tube. There's always different ways, but it's just being creative and thoughtful and intentional, right?
Yeah.
Educators. So, and especially in little, like toddlers and infants, they are working through their play schemas, because again, they're trying to make meaning out of their world. And so there's lots of ways of doing that, with play schemas. So we give you lots of examples and lots of books to read with children about these play schemas, about movement, about transporting, about enclosing, fort building. So we give you lots of really good examples to help you in your work.
Yeah. I love that perspective of recognizing what the schema is and taking that energy and using it for positive things rather than trying to stop it. I often use the metaphor that when you see, water coming to flood, if you just tell it to stop, it's not going to stop. But if you can dig a ditch that will guide it, then you can get it to where it actually needs to go. And it's the same kind of thing. There's already this momentum for this type of play. And if we're just trying to stop it, it's not going to work. But if we can guide it to where it's going to be useful or productive or safer or whatever it is that the concern is, we can guide that and still honor the schema, honor the fascination and the interests that they have so that we can support that. It's a beautiful way of looking at it.
Yes, definitely a positive way. It's a positive spin on negative stuff that happens in a classroom, right? There is negative stuff that happens, and now it's just flipping it and giving it a positive spin on it, which is good for us as educators, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in all of these approaches, you have to do a lot of introspection, a lot of reflection, a lot of careful observation. And you talk about using questions. I think both questions you ask yourself, but also questions with children in play. So how do you use questions to help make play more active, more rich?
Right. So we look at our project work as intentions, but we also look at it as research. We are doing research. I mean, there is a sort of very traditional sense that we as educators know everything, right? That we fill up the children and with our knowledge, and that's our purpose. Well, our purpose is not. I think I want to, change that perspective. Our purpose is to do the research. I've been in this field for a very long time, and I'm still amazed at the research that my partner and we can do together, and that we can figure out a beautiful play experience based on something that I have never done, she's never done, and really based on that research. So from that research, when you think of research, what is it? Questions, right? You're creating questions and you want to answer those questions. So that's what we're doing. We're creating questions. So every August, we all sit down as each classroom and we work out our intentions for the year. So teachers are part of this. It's not just, well, the children need to learn their colors and they need to know their numbers. We do not venture into that realm. We look at what do we want to research this year. And so we get some really interesting work from our staff and our educators. And so one of them, just this morning, I was doing a tour and I looked at their intention. It was, how do we create the calm in our infant room? And so that's a big, big question, right? So how do you do that with 10 children, 3 staff, all the development that's happening? So when you look at the calm, if we are guiding intention for this year as educators, is we want to create that calm. So then how do we do that, right? So then that's our research. So we're reading, how do you create calm as a person, right? So then yoga comes out of there. Mindful breath comes out of there. Mindful practice comes from there. The list went on and on about how to, and your food, like just all these things. So all those things now are put into this beautiful web to create. Now they get to create, project work based on all of those pieces. So each of those sort of ideas. So how do we incorporate yoga into our everyday practice? So that's where the questions come, right? So yoga is the idea, but how do we create yoga into our everyday practice? So now they have to come up with, is it something we're going to do in the morning? Is it something we're doing before lunch? Is it something we do at sleep time? I know some schools I've been reading, they're doing mindful breathing before nap time. And I think I'm always like, that is amazing. Just because it's always a little bit stressful. Children are, a little bit more hyped up. They, scared to sleep somewhere they don't know. So some mindful breathing, like that's amazing that you have your, 18-month-old doing mindful breathing. And so there's so many things. So each of sort of the ideas comes with a question. And then it's our job as educators to create the experiences, play proposals, whatever it is, out of there. So usually they come up with that main big question, then lots of ideas come out of it. And then they're probably creating 12 or to 15 questions for the year. And so it takes them all year. And then all of the children's intentions and play out of what we've been doing come into play also. So you can imagine what that web looks like. It's just a big, tangly web of ideas. And it's really exciting when I look at those that, that it's not just, oh, what a ladybug, right? Like there is
Right.
something richer happening here than just a ladybug. Poor ladybug, but I love her, but she's too simplistic. We want something deeper for the educators, for our children, and our families. Our families are amazed when they have an 18-month-old who can do mindful breathing and can calm themselves with a little self-regulation, right?
And I love that it models for the children when it starts with the adults asking questions and pursuing and researching,
Yeah.
that it's not just how do we get children to ask more questions or how do we get them to answer questions, but we're modeling just a practice of wonder
Yes.
and research and curiosity, and it starts with us and
Yes.
extends to them. And I love that.
Yes. Yeah. And it's a different way of thinking that I'm all of a sudden I'm basing my work for this week on this question, right? Instead of an actual noun of something like ladybugs or firefighters. But it makes your work important and interesting, and you want to, you find something. I know whenever I find a new idea, I come in and I'm like, guess what I found? And my co-partner, she's always up for that challenge of what we're doing. So I love it. Just, it makes our work exciting. And isn't that what you want to go to work every day for, is to be excited? And
Right.
I love being with the children, but I think if the work can be exciting, then it's just a great package to be able to spend your life doing your career.
Right.
Yeah.
So important. Now, you used the term play proposals a few times.
Yes.
So I wondered if you might want to explain that for people who don't have a Reggio
Sure.
background. What is a play proposal?
So it isn't. So you hear these words thrown around: invitations, provocations, all of that. That's what it is. It's a play proposal that you're giving to children to play, whether it's loose parts, something to do with the project work that you're working on. It doesn't necessarily have to be a product, like we're not painting on a paper of some sort. It can be just experiencing the materials and building a relationship with materials. And yeah, it's that umbrella of invitations,
Hmm.
provocations, play proposals.
I love that. I think if you're not familiar with the term, it can sound more like something you have to write down and submit a proposal. So I
Yeah,
love that explanation that it's
yeah,
just that those invitations and provocations, it's
yes,
proposing the play to the
yeah,
child in their own environment.
right, right.
So, as we talk about all these different perspectives and the way that we reflect and we bring intentionality and research and wonder,
Mm,
it's a lot of planning, right? We plan these play
yeah,
proposals. So, I am curious your perspective on how we bring intentionality and planning to play without taking over
yeah.
or co-opting the play.
Right. And sometimes that's our teacher agenda. We think that we have to ask children a million questions, or we have to make sure they're learning their colors or their ABCs and their one, two, threes. And so for us as educators, it is, again, this slow pedagogy of slowing down and really watching and observing the play and figuring out the intentions of what's happening. And we have journals. All of our staff have journals. If it's not a journal, it's a piece of paper and a pen that you've grabbed that you're going to transcribe back in, or turning on your phone and recording.
Mhm.
I've been doing that recently, just recording the play, and then I transcribe it into my journal that I'm going to use for documentation, or videotaping the play, right? And sometimes you can get some beautiful moments and you've missed it just because of the action in the classroom. And so for our team, we have planning times every week. We have once a week. We have planning times that they can plan within their team. We also have other times, sleep time is a great time to be able to have those kind of conversations. Outdoor time, I know my partner and I on Fridays, we come together and we're like, okay, what was great about this week? What do we want to continue next week? What do we want to realize next week? And just having that kind of brief conversation with our journal, we write it down and we carry on. And that's really how we do the planning of all of this. We come together with questions, and lots of times it'll be, okay, we want to do this. And then a week later, it's like, I have a great question. Let's ask this question. And I'm thinking we could use these materials and this. And then it comes together as a beautiful play proposal.
And it sounds like it is so much more, you talk about observing and documenting and recording rather than I go sit down with my piece of paper and I plan what the play is going to be. It's
Right.
more of a relationship of being responsive to where their play is and what their
Yeah.
curiosity is. And then
Yes.
how do we support, how do we guide and bring the element of structure that enables them to
Yeah.
enrich that play rather than here's, like you said, we don't start with here's what I'm going to do
Yes.
and that's what they're going to do, but
Yes.
it's responsive to where
Yes.
they are and then bringing your expertise to
Right.
support them.
Exactly. That's the exact equation, is that we are doing that lots of observation and not jumping to so quickly to something. And that just to sort of step back and say, is this really what I think it is? And having those conversations with your partner and having those conversations with your children also, right? Asking them sort of really important questions, not already what you know, like what color is that car? No, I want to
Mhm.
know how does those tires move? How do they move? And then you get this great question because I use a lot of how questions. And there's a whole
Mhm.
chapter in our book about questions. And it's about the how question because how is about constructing, engaging, building. It's not about a what question is usually a one word answer.
Right.
A why question is very scientific and there's an actual reason. And then where, when are all about time and place, or who is about a person, right? Whereas a how question is really about constructing, right? Like how do leaves change color in the fall? Yes, there is a very scientific one, which is a why, but then why not a magical one?
Mhm.
And there's a few stories in our book about magical, ladybugs landing on trees and turning them red. That was one of our little friends years ago. She told that story. And so it was like, oh my gosh, like, whoa, that is amazing. That's what you want to hear from your children, not that, they'll learn about, why leaves change color in grade 3. I don't even remember from why. I just know they're beautiful when they change. And it makes me feel very magical and happy when I walk down my street.
Well, and I think when it comes to asking questions, just like you're saying, sometimes we forget that it's the process of reflecting and thinking about and answering that how question. It's
Yes,
not so much that do they know the right answer to how, it's
right.
getting them to reflect and to think out loud and to do. I love that you honor the magical thinking is so
Hmm.
valuable. It is no less valuable to talk about the process of a ladybug turning leaves
Yes,
red
yes,
than it is to go through these other processes because especially at this age, it's that
yes.
wondering, it's the thinking out loud, it's articulating, it's the process of
Mhm.
thinking through
Yes,
those wonderings. And it's
yes,
okay. It's in fact fantastic if it's not the right question. And that's, I think,
right.
a great reminder for us to ask those questions
Yes,
that we know they don't know the answer to. Those are still valuable
yes,
conversations to have.
yes. And that it's those magical answers that you're never going to get after 5. After
Mhm.
5, you don't get those magical, wonderful. I always love those answers when they have this great explanation about something. And I'm like, you are thinking, you are using all the brain cells that you have. And I think it brings so much joy to me as an educator when I hear that and that I can actually record that and then ask them to draw a picture about it. That's magical. That's thinking, not that leaves change color because of chloroform and the temperature drops and all of that. I don't, as a 2 and 3 year old, I'm not interested in that for them. I am interested in, yes, a ladybug landed and changed the tree to red. Like that's magical. And that's where you want to go, not the whole scientific stuff that they'll learn later. They'll learn later on in life, right? So, and unfortunately, I think there's even studies done once after children are at the age of 5, they stop the magical thinking. They don't, they just don't participate in it. And we know as adults, we don't participate in that anymore. But yeah, that's the unfortunate part. So you have to savor those and you have to cherish them. And they deserve to share those beautiful thinking with you as educators.
Yeah, really honor that magical time.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yes.
Well, I so appreciate the perspectives that you've shared here and that you're sharing in the book. Before we close out, you had mentioned a really fun story to share that kind of ties all of these ideas together.
Yes. So, in our program is a half day in the program that I work. I took myself out of the office, doing licensing and public health and all that 4 years ago. And I said, no, this next 4 years, 5 years, I want to concentrate on research. I was writing my book at the time and I have other ideas now in place. And so I just wanted to do more research. And I also wanted to really, because I had been in administration for like 20 years. And I also wanted to understand what the perspective of the educator, like when they tell me I can't do this, or this is too hard, or I wanted to understand that fully and I wanted to live it. So again, I'm in the classroom half days, and then I do my big job in the afternoons. But in the mornings, so we have our preschoolers, and they're all three, going to be four in the next year. So last year we had a very challenging year. We had 5 children out of 12 on the spectrum. And
Mm.
so it was a lot of sensory, it was a lot of mindset change for us as educators. We managed through, and it was like amazing the work that we did, but it was challenging. And to do the project work that we traditionally understand, it was very challenging to do that. So in August, when my room partner and I, Denitza, sat down, we said, okay, we want to do something beautiful this year. So I said, okay, let that be our question, our guiding question. How can we create something beautiful this year? And so I said, let's experiment with paint techniques. Let's experiment with different kinds of paints. Let's experiment with collage, printmaking, all of this. And so we both were like, yes, on board, totally. Lots of drawing, lots of like just really creative, really to our hearts work. And so started painting, and about the second week in our drawing journals, one of my little friends, she showed me this picture, and it was a bright pink sky and a house with a little person in it with a very straight face. And I said, tell me about this picture. So she said to me, it's a rainbow, Heather. And then she said, it's a rainbow city. But in this picture, there was no rainbow. And I was like, okay. So I recorded that in their book, and I closed it, and I went to my partner and I said, Rainbow City. What can we do with that? I think that's magical. Like it was just like, aha, how can we create a rainbow city? So we both sat back and said, no, we're going to slow down. Because the traditional, what would we have done traditionally? We would have been painting rainbows. We would have had, squares of colors. Let's make a rainbow. Like that's the traditional. But then when we thought about why doesn't this picture have a rainbow? Why is this little friend thinking that she has a rainbow? And like, what's happening here? So when you do the research, like children 3 and 4, they typically, if they're well adjusted, happy, just really just a well-adjusted child will draw rainbows in their pictures. And for everybody who has children, that they have drawn rainbows in their pictures when they were 3, 4, 5. There's always a rainbow, right? And so rainbows represent happiness to children, represent a feeling of well-being, a sense of belonging, and that sense of belonging is really important in this story. So we go along and we decide we're going to do Rainbow City. So we decide, and all the children are now interested in this. So we have stories about different kinds of rainbows. And some of the stories I have never read before, and I just ordered them. And this one story was about how does the sky glow? Because it just had beautiful picture, like beautiful painting on the outside. Well, I get to the end and it's a city that looks like a rainbow. And so I'm like, okay, the universe is telling me that this is the way we should be going. And so we do lots of stuff on Rainbow City. So we've got blocks, we got translucent, we add light to it. It's beautiful building. All of the children are interested. We're doing beautiful work. And so then into October, she draws a rainbow monster in this collage. Everybody's drawn something different, and she's drawn a rainbow monster. The rainbow monster is this round guy with this rainbow hair. And I was like, tell me about this. And she goes, well, he doesn't live in Rainbow City. We can't let him live in Rainbow City. He doesn't live in Rainbow. And she was like very anxious about it. I was like, okay, he doesn't have to live in Rainbow City. So we left him over this. But the other kids loved the rainbow monster, thought it was amazing. And so then 2 weeks later, she draws a rainbow jail. So it's like, tell me about this. And she said, well, you have to keep Rainbow Jail in Rainbow City. The city needs a jail. So I was like, okay, so I'm now thinking, what is going on here? What is happening?
Hmm.
And so then we have a discussion with mom, and we learn that something very traumatic happened in their family life. And it wasn't divorce, it was a totally other thing that happened. So now this child is dealing with trauma. And so I'm reading about trauma and children, and that's my research part, right? So now how do we create Rainbow City as being something that is happiness and safe and creates a sense of belonging? That's our big question. That is our guiding question, because now everybody's interested in Rainbow City. So Rainbow City carries on, and I feel like this child did get that sense of belonging and sense of happiness from creating these rainbows. She didn't actually paint a rainbow until November. And so that was that. And then, so this is just carried on. So we asked, oh, so then we did some fabric work, and we had all these rainbow scarves. And so she was like, Heather, I'm inside a rainbow and I'm so happy. And I was like, yes, this is where this goes, right? Now all the other children are now doing it. Heather, take a picture of me while I'm in the rainbow. And I thought it was such a beautiful metaphor of what is the play is happening, right? So it gives her joy and it makes her feel happy. And this was her happy place to come to school every day. But just recently, they've now been taking a bus to Rainbow Village or city, and line up the chairs, and they bring coffee and they bring muffins and they have a steering wheel, and they sleep in the bus. And so that's what they've been doing. They've been building forts with boxes that we've painted all rainbow colors. So there's been all this beautiful, beautiful work. And so our next step is we are looking at storytelling from a Rainbow City perspective. And so we're hoping that we'll have all these really beautiful creative stories to share with parents at our end of year curriculum night. That we will do a reading of all the stories, and they'll be beautifully illustrated, and we'll publish them, and it will be an ending that is just spectacular. So that's my little rainbow story. But again, we didn't jump to making rainbows. We have not made rainbows in this almost whole year of curriculum planning, which is a slowing down process, right?
And I love such a beautiful way to honor the magical thinking, that rather
Yes,
than taking, oh, she said rainbows, and here's what I think of for rainbows. Like you
yes,
said, it was slowing down and questioning and saying, what does she mean? What do
yes,
they mean? What are the children interested in? What's this magical world that is unique only to them, that they
yes,
can build and construct together? And the belonging that comes from that we have
yes,
built this rainbow city together.
yes.
What a beautiful,
And
magical
oh,
opportunity.
thank you. And I also think about it, yes, like such a metaphor, like in the classroom, because most of these children had not been at a formalized anything. They had not been through childcare from the time they were toddlers. This was their first experience. So now they're looking for that sense of belonging, right? So that's where I come to. That's where we both, my partner and I, this Rainbow City is about a sense of belonging, and that now they're working together. So they're working together every single day building. And so on my Instagram account, there's lots of detail about all the different activities that we've done. So I'm at the sunflower underscore studio. And that's where you'll see that work. And you can see the many, many play proposals that we have introduced to our children, and the amazing work that they have done and given us this year. I'm very honored to have been part of it.
It is a fun account to follow. I'll make sure that I link it in there. And I
Yes.
just love the way that you inspire and honor the wonder and the magical
Um,
thinking. So
thank you.
thank you for sharing that on our podcast episode today, but also putting it into that fantastic book, Actions of Play, so that we can
Yes.
bring that into wherever we're doing our work, to remember to
Yes.
honor that magical thinking and to honor the active role that children need to play in that.
Yes. Thank you so much for giving this a voice. I feel like it's important work, and I love my work. And I can't believe after all these years, I'm still doing this work. So for me, this is magical. And yeah, so yes, thank you so much, Amanda.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again for listening to Not Just Cute, the podcast. You can find show notes at notjustcute.com/podcast/episode 80. There, you'll find links to Heather's book, as well as other tidbits I know you'll love. You can also hit up the show notes for a link to the Why We Play letters. Head to notjustcute.com/podcast/episode 80, or go straight to notjustcute.com/why we play to get signed up and download your free sample letter. I'm Amanda Morgan. You can read more on my blog and sign up for the Not Just Cute newsletter at notjustcute.com. You can also stay tuned for social media updates on my Instagram by following me at Amanda_NotJustCute. Thanks for listening today, and as always, thank you for standing up for children and for childhood.